Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Anisha Jennings, and today we're exploring how one woman's career pivot is opening doors for others. Join us as Angie shares her journey from Wall Street to Myndify, proving that reimagining your path can lead to empowering others. Welcome, Angie. Thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell our listeners your journey from DR to US and all the amazing things you've done so far.
Yeah. So I came from the Dominican Republic at a very young age, around 4 or 5, and I moved into Harlem in New York, a very tight-knit immigrant community. So although I was technically in the US, you might say that it's a small version of the Dominican Republic. Everyone spoke Spanish, ate the same food. So I was here, but I was really there. And I lived in that bubble for many, many years. Until I went to high school. And in high school was my first exposure to a lot of different cultures. That was also when I decided that I wanted to kind of break the mold and go in a different path than, most of my family. I wanted to go into finance, which nobody knew what that was, funny enough. Most of my family thought that that meant working at a bank as a teller. So there was a lot of confusion. I had to clarify. No, I wanted to work in wealth management in particular. So I set my mind to it. I was like, I'm gonna go to one of the top schools for business. I'm gonna get this done. And I did. I ended up going to a really good business school in the city. And I got my degree in economics, but ultimately did end up in a financial career. I did wealth management for one of the top broker dealers. And again, that took a lot of education from not only my family, but some friends, because friends from the neighborhood, they're like, well, where are you going? Does that mean, like you're not going to be like us anymore? You're going to start acting a certain way? And I'm like, no, I'm still going to eat my plantains. Nothing's changing. But this is what I wanted to do. So I did that for many years. So I stayed in finance for about actually over 10 years. I worked myself up in different positions, ultimately to a director in a what's called an IRA family office, which catered to, lack of better words, very, very rich people. And that was fun. I learned so much, which I'm happy to share some of my insights there. But there was a tinkling that I had inside me, like something's missing, this is not my end all. And that was really my pivot point to kind of drop my career in finance that I worked so hard on and start Myndify.
So, what drew you to finance initially?
I have a lot of respect for wealth management and kind of the handling of money. And maybe in retrospect, it was because of my humble background, not having money. You kind of let me, a lot of respect and admiration for the finance world, I would say. So I knew I wanted to help folks around me and just in general better manage and grow their financial situation. And so that drew me in. I'm also a very social person. I love building connections and kind of offering advice from my knowledge. So those three things sort of fit perfectly into this career that I chose.
So you came here when you were really young. So it's not like, you actually faced a lot when you came here. As you grew up, what was it like growing up with immigrant parents? And because of the switch you wanted to make, like you mentioned, it took education for your family, for your friends. What did those challenges look like and how did you navigate them?
Yeah, I mean, I came at a really young age, which was definitely an advantage. I picked up the language, I picked up the know-how a little bit earlier than some other folks that come at a later stage. But I was still the first in my family to go to a university to kind of do all these things, and I had to figure it out myself. If I wanted to go to a top business school, I had to figure out how I was going to pay for it. And so I started working at a young age. My first child was at 14. So I had all these things that I had to figure out myself, which now that I'm a mom, I'm like, oh my God, like, how did I do this young? But I think that that's the typical story of immigrants. They just, they're go-getters. They figure things out.
Yes, amazing. So, how did your college experience in New York shape your career path?
It was tough, I will say. College was not easy. I went to a New York City high school, and my high school was phenomenal. But I did notice that there was a gap once I entered college. I worked my behind off to get to the school of my dreams, but I felt up to par with my colleagues and other students that were there who were receiving some of the top education, who came in already knowing what stocks and bonds and all these things were. I didn't even know about retirement accounts. My expectation was, well, I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna be taught the fundamentals. And I quickly learned that I was supposed to know the fundamentals and really more practicing kind of how to use and apply those fundamentals. And so there was a lot of catching up that I had to do once there.
Do you feel like your background as an immigrant helped you navigate through all of those challenges easier, or was it difficult? And how did you go through that?
I think as an immigrant, one of the things that you get is tenacity. You also, you just don't take no for an answer, even for yourself. And so you see challenges for what they are, but you don't let them become a barrier. And so that was my approach. Okay, I'm behind right now as a freshman, but I'm going to catch up. And that was my mindset there.
So, how did you navigate being one of a few women of color in finance?
That was very interesting. I mean, I knew coming in, just seeing my colleagues in college, that I was going to be one of the only ones working as well in this field. I think there are pros and there's cons to almost everything. Pros are pretty obvious. You know, you have dual languages, you get to connect with more people, your reach is a little bit bigger, and you stand out easier. But the flip side is that some of your cultural tendencies can get misrepresented. And so as a Latina, I speak with my hands, I'm very passionate, I'm vocal, and that could be misrepresented to, likes confrontation, So these different things that you have to self-teach yourself of how to navigate certain environments so that folks don't misrepresent your actions.
Yes, yes, that can be a little much when we talk with, we're the same way. So, how did you manage building a network in your industry? And how did you balance it with being a mom and, your career and your personal life? How did you balance all of this?
So my network came from college, from my finance network came from college. So a lot of my college friends were in the business world one way or another. And it's because my back home friends were doing other things. And that was a great network to kind of lean back when I needed help. Now, when I started having kids, that changed everything because my priorities changed. Whereas I was career driven, I would stay in the office. Working a 12, 13-hour shift was nothing. Not like that was the norm. But when you have kids, that you quickly start setting boundaries. I have to be home by a certain time to put my kids to bed. I have to pick them up, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of takes you aback and it makes you self-reflect. Okay, if these are my priorities, what are the things that need to change in my life to make sure that these items are indeed being prioritized?
How did your skills in your college help you in your finance domain?
College was helpful in that it taught me how to build stronger relationships with folks. Obviously, it taught me the fundamentals that I needed for a financial career, but I felt like a lot of what I learned or what I needed to for a wealth manager or a financial advisors came on the job. What I really gathered from college was how to build relationships, how to navigate difficult situations, and that was definitely beneficial come time.
So, how do you think you are opening the doors for women of color?
So it's funny, I mentioned jokingly that when I was telling friends and family that I was gonna go into finance, they said, well, are you working at Chase? Are you working at TD as a teller? And I had to, educate them. Well, no, there's more than that. There's a whole career doing this and that. And I think for certain people that opened the door, so, oh, wow, okay. Let me look into this. Let me see if I see myself doing it. And I did have a couple of friends from the neighborhood and even family members looked into finance or surrounding industries because it opened the door. Well, if she could do it, I could do it too, which was amazing to see.
Awesome. You moved from finance to tech. Tell
Yeah.
us about that journey and tell us about, what drew you to start this.
Yeah, so I went from one industry that's very male oriented, a lot of folks looking very similar, to another industry that's also very male oriented, not a lot of immigrants, but I love it. So ultimately, I'll tell you the story of how I went into tech because it's a very interesting one. As a mom of two, I found myself getting frustrated that I was missing some of my knowledge when I needed it. So if I went to the doctor with my kids, I had the doctor's appointment, and then coming out, I would remember, oh, I forgot to mention this that I wanted to ask the doctor. Or if we went on vacation, oh, I forgot to bring this, which I had in my mind from last vacation that I should bring. And so I was like, oh, why does this keep happening? And I kind of looked at and reviewed my own system for remembering insights and kind of all those thoughts that I have. In my system, wait for it, writing it on my notes app. Doesn't work for anyone. It does not work for anyone. Let me tell you. I asked around, and it was like, well, what are you doing for this? And everyone said the same answer. Nothing. It frustrates me too. And so that was really my aha moment. I was like, okay, interesting. There's a market here for this. There wasn't really any product out there satisfying the needs of the people, I would say, under this domain. So after doing a lot of research, I was like, okay, this might be something that I might jump into. I always kind of do a lot of research before taking risks, and I call them calculated risks. So when I went to finance, I did a lot of research, like, okay, can somebody like me make it here? Yes, my research supported it, I went in. Same thing when I decided to pivot into tech. I'm like, well, can somebody like me that has no coding background, no tech background, I cannot write a single line of code, create software to help solve this problem. And so the research said yes, and not only can you do it, there's a market for it, and you're going to be successful because you're bringing something that people want, but there isn't anymore.
That's amazing. So how does Harlem influence your business approach?
I would say Myndify is for moms, but it's also for folks that want to be resourceful. I'm very resourceful in what I do, and I'm also always thinking ways of saving time and money. As somebody that came from a single mom that worked two jobs, I know the value of that. So, going to the doctor, you're spending money. So you want to make the most of it. If you forget to bring something up while you're there, then that was your chance. Same thing if you realize that buying something, ahead of time versus at the door saves you money, then that's something you want to remember. So one of the things that I wanted Myndify to do is help folks from the community that are struggling. I wouldn't say struggling, that are kind of meeting these demands of having to remember things to save them on time or money, to help them in that aspect.
Yes, that's a great idea. So tell us more about Myndify. Like, what do you do and how does it help people?
Yeah. So I wanted to do three things because the notes app that we have right now are very primitive. It's a brain dump, right? You have a thought, you put a title, and then you just drop it in. But it doesn't serve any purpose because most of the time we forget that it's there. So first and foremost, want to help you capture those thoughts that you have in an organized way. My pet peeve was having to organize it myself because I barely have time to do anything in a day, less I'm not gonna have time to start making folders and organizing my notes. That wasn't gonna happen. So Myndify self-organizes, you don't have to worry about that. Second thing is we've added smart reminders to make those insights actionable. So next time you do go to the doctor's appointment with your kids, guess what? You're gonna get an alert saying, hey, there's something here you wanted to remember. Let's go through it so that you don't miss it. Or next time you go to a restaurant, you get a pop-up and you're prompted to recall that you didn't like that steak last time. So don't spend your money on that steak. Try something else. And it saves you that time, it saves you that money. The third thing that we've added, which is one of my favorite, is AI. Because in the world of AI, you just have to, right? And so we added an AI chatbot called Anggie. And what Anggie does is it's a good personal assistant that we always needed. So I asked it the other day, like, what was that apple picking place that I took the kids to last year? And it gave me a response. So I don't have to spend time trying to remember the name of places. Or I can ask it like, hey, which of my friends is vegan? Because I had those, I'm inviting people over. I know somebody is vegan, or, it tells you the answer based on all the notes that you have. It's the personal assistant that we always needed.
Lovely. I can't wait to check it out. So, what surprised you most about the tech industry?
I think it's easier to get started than most people thought. And it's really interesting. I came in with no network, right? I just kind of jumped in. It was like a sink or swim moment, but it's doable. And I think once people started seeing that it's doable, a lot of other folks that were had their own thoughts and personal journeys of, I have this idea, but I don't know if, I'm a mom too. I don't know anything about coding. It is doable. You just have to, do the research, you have to do the work, but you can do it.
So, what unique perspective do you bring to tech besides your amazing financial background? What's your unique perspective that you bring to tech?
So I would say I would bring being a mom. If you look at a lot of the tech CEOs, especially the big ones, guess what? They're all male. And yes, they're fathers, but I think when you're a mom and you're an active mom, present mom, it brings a different perspective. And that's why Myndify is so near and dear, because it is for moms. We carry the mental load of the household. We are the ones buying the shampoos, taking kids to doctors, planning the family trips. So the mental load is there, and it would be so helpful. We have a place to offload it, but not only capture those thoughts, but help you with it.
So, do you have case studies or examples of people who have used this and the impact that Myndify has had?
Yeah, I would say before we started development, this goes back to doing research. I reached out to a ton of women, not just moms, just women in general. And I was like, what are the things that you're forgetting at a like daily basis or weekly basis that's just frustrating you? And I got a good list of things from, I mentioned doctor's appointment, but also expiry dates. That was a big one. That was surprising to me. So we had to keep in our head, when does our passport expire? When does my registration expire? And some of us were really good at putting those reminders on our phone, but then we don't remember exactly where we put it. Then we put it in the notes app, then we put it in the reminders app. It's not very effective. So that was one feature that when we did beta testing, users loved. They're like, oh my God, a very centralized place where I can just not only paperwork. Yeah, I can remember when my makeup expires or food items. So that was a big hit. And the other thing that came from that initial kind of discovery phase was gift ideas. This was huge for folks. How many times are we in the mall or we're going through Instagram and we're like, oh, that would be a really good gift for my friend or for so-and-so's son or daughter. And we think about it, we might even take a screenshot, and then that's where the idea dies. And so we built in a feature so that you can actually put it in there under that person's record, so you know exactly where it is. And that did phenomenally well in beta testing. They're like, oh my God, this is like, if I am thinking of Christmas presents in February, like I don't have to be anxious that I'm gonna forget. Like I know where it is.
All these ideas. That's amazing. How do you measure your impact on the community?
So we are launching in Q1 this year. So far, beta testing has done really well. And so it really validated the notion that this is a product that people want. And so what I'm hoping that post-launch the community will kind of take away is, it's okay to not have everything in your head. It's okay to have something that helps you, because sometimes we're stubborn and sometimes we say like, no, I'll remember. But the fact is, are you ready for this? 70% of new information gets wiped out by our brain in the first 48 hours.
Wow.
That is a fact. And so don't overly stress yourself trying to remember things that your brain is going to forget. Seek the help and embrace it.
Yes, get the help as needed. Yes. So when do you guys launch?
So we're launching Q1 of this year, so in a couple of weeks. You can check it out in our website, our exact launch. It's myndifyapp.com.
So, what's your vision for diversity in tech?
I hope, and I'm seeing more and more women kind of endeavor into tech and building softwares themselves. I hope that there's one day where amongst the top CEOs of tech companies, there's gonna be females, and not only females, but immigrant females or females that, that are diverse, that don't, that have different backgrounds.
So, how do you plan to scale your impact?
So we're launching Q1 of this year. We're getting the word out. So we're reaching out to different groups and letting them know that we exist. There's already pent up excitement for the product, and we're hoping that that snowballs into a scalability for the business.
So, you've been a single mom, you have kids, and you've launched this business. What is your advice on how you balance all of this?
It is tough. It is very tough. I do have a set schedule of when I'm working. I have boundaries essentially. I communicate them. The other day I said, "Hey, I have to go. My child is sick." So, and just having those priorities come first, being very communicative and setting boundaries will allow you to do different things.
So, how old are your kids?
So my youngest is 3, so she's in pre-K 3. She's my little diva, feisty one. And then my oldest is 6. She's such an angel. She's the more reserved one. She's the shyer one, but still great to have.
So, how do they see you in this light of being a businesswoman? And I know they're very young, but how do you think it's impacting them, or how do you think it has simplified your life by starting this business of Myndify? How has it affected your quality of life so you're more present for them?
Yeah, when you're a financial advisor, you don't really have hours. You're always on call. If something happens with one of your clients, you're probably one of their first calls. So I had calls in the night before. I had calls during the weekend while I was in swim class with my kids. There's no stopping to it. When you have your own business, you have more flexibility. And again, you can set those boundaries there and say, hey, let's talk about this at another time. So that's really the difference between being a worker and being, I guess, the boss. But I do want to say that I did vow to myself that I'll the employees that work under Myndify will have that flexibility to set boundaries, because as a working mom, I know the challenges that come with that.
So how long did it take you from wanting to move from finance to tech? How was that journey, like the moving, and what did your family and friends think of it? Because you mentioned how it was when you were getting into finance and now you're moving from finance to tech. So what did they think about that?
So while I was working, it's crazy. I was working during the day, then doing my thing with the kids in the afternoons, would put them to bed around 7, 8, and then I would start doing Myndify work at night, and I would go to sleep at midnight, sometimes even further than that. So I was a little bit delirious around that time frame. And I probably spent around 4 or 5 months doing that, just doing research more than anything, just kind of validating the idea, making sure that the market's there and gaining up knowledge in the tech world. Because if I'm gonna have conversations with some big tech guys, I need to be able to talk. And so once I decided to pull the trigger, I set my mom down. That was the big one. My husband was on board right away, but my mom was the big one. And like most immigrant moms, they're like, "What? You have a safety net. Like, what are you doing? Are you crazy, my child?" Blah, 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 blah. And so I just sat her down and I explained to her what I was doing. I reassured her I knew what I was doing, that it, again, calculated risk, but I kind of have some fallback plans, like if this, like kind of contingencies, like I had thought of it all, mother, like it should be fine. And instead of kind of going crazy on me, which is what I expected, she was silent, which was like 10 times worse. So she did not say much. I was like, oh God, like what is she thinking? Like,
The
it's just
golden
like, I
time.
don't know if it's me or it's an immigrant thing, but it's like the pain of disappointing your mother that came to this country for you and all of that stuff. So that actually made me more determined. I was like, oh, I'm gonna prove to her that this was a good move. Like, watch, we're gonna be sitting in a yacht one day. Like,
Oh.
so, but she actually didn't tell anyone. which is not on par for my mother. So that also concerned me. I'm like, oh God, like, is she trying to hide this? But she came more to, as I started openly more marketing the company, she kind of came to terms and she was actually got really excited for the product. She was like, oh, I could use it for this, I could use it for that, and telling her friends. So I think we got a 180 from her.
Lovely. Yes, the golden silence.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome. So, how do you see your role shaping the future of tech?
I hope that by having more females with diverse backgrounds open the doors to other females that are in the cusp of, or just have ideas in general, and might think that there's a barrier there when there isn't. I think representation is very important in every industry, and the more folks see diversity at the top, the more they're going to be prone to voice their ideas, voice their opinions. And that's really when innovation kind of spurs.
Yes. So, as a Latina woman, how do you think, all these things were for you from moving from finance to the tech? How did it help you? How did it empower you? And what would be your advice to empower other women?
Leverage what you know. For me, knowing finance, I'm very business savvy. I know books, I know how to manage books, I know about expenses, and I know how to, the basic operation of a business. That comes natural to me, and really kind of lean on what you know. You might think that you have two different industries that are, there's no overlap, but there almost always is. Find what that overlap is and use it to your advantage.
So, you've been in finance and now in the tech for so long. What would be your three takeaways from your journey of starting and to where you are now?
I think one of the biggest one is networking is so important. Always be open to get to know people genuinely. Don't do it just because. Build a network of not only folks that are doing the industry that you're in, but different industries. Because like me, you don't know if you're gonna pivot or end somewhere else. And also that network, that comes to point number two, use the network when needed. Don't be shy to, say, hey, I'm working on this. Do you know anyone? When I went into the tech world, although I had a really big and strong financial network, I leaned into it like, hey, do you guys know anyone in the tech space? And it wasn't them directly, but it was somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody. So have that network and also use the network.
Yes, that's absolutely important. So what are some things that you wish you knew, before you started your business and you learned it as you kept growing? And, what would be something that you can provide others with? Like, what are the insights that you can provide others with?
I think building a business is almost like renovating a house where you start off, and even if you have stellar project management skills and you planned everything to the T, there's going to be hiccups, and almost always there's going to be delays. And so coming in, I had so many months of planning and researching. I was like, I knew exactly what I'm doing. This is just going to be the timeline, and there's hiccups that happen. Now that I have a more of a tech network, I asked around like, hey, how has your experience been? And it's been very similar to even folks that do have coding background, that do have tech experience. So just being open to the hiccups, being flexible to things that don't go your way as a business person is probably what you should come to expect.
Yes, indeed. So now having your own business and owning your own business, how has it affected your quality of life and your peace of mind? And how has it influenced you?
It's night and day, honestly. Having control of your time is empowering. And, I was kind of sad as I think about it. When I was in finance, I had my kids go to school and then go to an after school program. And then they would come home and I would make them dinner and then put them to bed. So I was really spending 1 or 2 hours with them, which is not, especially when they're so young, it's not enough time. Being a business owner allows you to have more flexibility to have to give to your children. So now they don't go to after school, I pick them up. And yes, do mommy sometimes have calls in the afternoons? They understand that, but for the most part, I'm helping them with their homework. I'm hearing about their day, which I love, so I can get to know the personalities and kind of their reactions to certain events at school. And that's exactly what I wanted.
Awesome. That's amazing. So now, what are the plans for launching your product, and what are we to look out for?
Yes, so Myndify launches this quarter, probably late February, early March. So look out for that. We're super excited for that. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, the product is free, the app is free. But we wanted to make sure that all the folks that need it get it. And so if you find yourself frustrated with this problem, there's a free solution out there for you. Try it. You're gonna love it, I promise.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you've made such a useful product and that you were, giving it for free. So, if our listeners want to get in touch with you or work with you or even find the app, how do they connect with you?
Yes, so check out our website, myndifyapp.com, Myndify app.com, and you can reach out to me to biz at myndifyapp.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all this information. And I wish you all the best for the launch. And I can't wait to check out the app. Thank you for your time and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
As we wrap up with Angie, remember that every career transition is an opportunity to build bridges for others. This is Anisha Jennings reminding you that sometimes the biggest impact comes from being the change you wish to see. Until next time.